Minister of Bulgaria. He is Kirill Petkov and joins me now. Prime Minister, thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon here on Sky News. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
We're talking about the diplomatic efforts. We understand that the third round of peace talks between Ukraine and Russia are underway as we speak together here this afternoon. Can you talk to me about what Bulgaria is doing in an effort to go against what Russia's doing in Ukraine?
As you saw, Bulgaria in the current government, we did speak in one voice with both the European Union and NATO in regards to the sanctions that were imposed up to now. Even though Bulgaria currently has the biggest dependency on gas and oil and tourists, and we're just so close to the conflict, we did not hesitate to fully support the sanctions up to this point, because we believe that freedom and democracy and international rules are beyond just the calculations of economic costs to each of the economies. We also spoke in the last meeting is that Bulgaria is there to support our friends from Ukraine. We are sending trucks and trucks worth of humanitarian support. We've created a special group for supporting the refugees from the war. Currently, we already have 34,000 people entering Bulgaria. We're hosting them. The Bulgarian government, even with its limited budget, is already supporting every Ukrainian refugees, placing them in hotel, creating food and shelter for each one of them. So we're a small country with 6.5 million people, but we're there to support Ukraine as much as we can.
Yeah, you want to support Ukraine, but traditionally Bulgaria has very traditional, strong ties with Russia. Do you think Bulgaria is unique in this situation in terms of you have such strong ties to both countries? It puts you in a very difficult position. You mentioned there your heavy reliance on energy from Russia. And we're just looking, our viewers will also be able to see alongside you a picture of the Dutch Prime Minister walking into Downing Street now. We'll just keep an eye on events at Downing Street. But returning to Bulgaria and the situation you find yourself in, do you find it particularly difficult because you're caught between the two, Ukraine and Russia?
It is a particularly difficult situation because our gas dependency is over 90% from Russia. Our electrical dependency is over 30%, and our oil is over 60%. So you can imagine our whole energy sector is so dependent. Yet I want to say that the Bulgarian people really decided to take a stand this time and take a stand with Ukraine because while we always had traditional good ties with the Russian people, we do not support at all. In fact, we really think it's really terrible what the Putin's regime is doing today to Ukraine. So we're separating the traditional ties, cultural ties of the Russian-Bulgarian relationship with the current government actions of Russia, which have nothing to do with our closeness. We do not. No country in Europe and in the world should have the freedom to enter in other countries' borders and bombshell and use false reasons for that. So we're really standing strong when it comes to this specific conflict.
Prime Minister, I'd like to ask how difficult it is for you personally, because you have a balancing act, don't you, between showing support and solidarity and offering aid to your neighbour Ukraine and protecting your people, the people of Bulgaria, because as you said, you know, you depend heavily on Russia, but also you're part of Vladimir Putin's wider plan. Those who have been following this situation for years will know that Moscow has always demanded a halt to NATO expansion and a return to 1997 NATO borders. Bulgaria, of course, only became a member in 2004. There is a real threat to Bulgaria looking at this Ukraine conflict. And do you have that in your mind when you make these decisions? Because primarily your focus is the people of Bulgaria.
True. I mean, I am elected by the people of Bulgaria, so my focus is there. But I think there are two ways to make a decision here. One is to take out the calculator and to start calculating the cost and benefits of each decision. The other one is to say, regardless of the cost and benefits, what is the right thing to do? And at this point in time, the right thing to do is to make sure that we speak out on the fact that Russia did not have to enter into this war. It's wrong, and was there to support the Ukrainian people. Yes, it's a very difficult situation for us because we have to start diversifying as fast as possible, and some of those projects cannot happen overnight. But nevertheless, we've spoken loud and clear that we're very much against the Russians' action, and the war in Ukraine is just a horrible act.
Yeah, Bulgaria very much united with other Western countries in condemning the actions of Russia. We understand that. We are watching here in the UK our Prime Minister meet today with his Dutch and Canadian counterpart as part of the West this week pushing for tougher sanctions. We are expecting announcements to be made in the coming days. How far can you go in Bulgaria? I know that you committed humanitarian aid. You've stopped short of supplying weapons to Ukraine. How far do you think you can go, as we've been talking about Bulgaria's sensitivity when it comes to its Russian neighbour?
Also, what we did is we closed our airspace with all the European countries. We've banned some of the Russian media in the country, as the rest of Europe. We are going to continue to support hugely with humanitarian aid and welcome all the refugees of war. So these are huge costs for our little economy, and we'll fully go for it. How far? I mean, I'll look into the proposals of the European family, and one thing is clear: in order to be strong in this situation, we have to speak in one voice. So as long as we have to discuss among us, in the end we have to come out united.
Can you give me an idea of the feeling amongst the people in Bulgaria in terms of, you have a coalition government, there is pro-Russian socialist contingency, there's pro-Western reformers in your government. A lot of people looking from outside Bulgaria, looking at the split in your government. There's two stories operating there. Is that the same to be said amongst the people in terms of how they view this war?
So the stories within our government are not anymore so much to people, because I did fire my defense minister last week. So the government is speaking in one voice now. When it comes to the people, of course, the traditional sentiment for the cultural links with Russia are always there, especially in the older population. So we want to make sure we differentiate our relationship with the Russian people with the Putin regime. They're two very separate issues, and we can have a very different approaches to both. So, and I think more and more as we see the poor families of Ukraine being bomb-shelled and their houses being destroyed, and the crying women and children on TV, I think everybody starts to make this difference between the Russian government today and the Russian traditions and the Russian music and the Russian culture, the Russian altars. So these are two different things, and they should not be intermixed.
Yeah, just to update our viewers, you did fire your defence minister for pro-Russian statements he made. On a wider note, as we look ahead in this conflict, we're not even at the end of the second week. This is very early days. But our Prime Minister in the UK says that Putin must fail, and that this is a shift in not just the security order of Europe, but the world. Things are changing. Is this the end for Vladimir Putin? Has he gone too far here in terms of he underestimated the rest of the world's response to his actions?
So we all have to see. I mean, nobody predicted what would happen to the scale it happened. So my first priority is to see the stop of war, and to make sure that people are not sheltered, that their homes are not being shelled with rockets. So that should be our first priority for everyone. Afterwards, I think Russia and the Russian people will be so much better off when it comes to having a more democratic, more open government of Russia. So we're watching, we're very close to the situation. We know their costs. I hope they we'll be able to mitigate them, and we're working very hard on this. We have opened our borders. One thing, by the way, I wanted to make sure it's clear, because there was a little bit of a mistake on this. We are very open to the Ukrainian refugees, because we have huge Bulgarian minority in Ukraine, by the way. So they come and they speak the same languages as the rest of their Bulgarian families. So that's the only difference I said when I said Bulgaria is really welcoming these refugees. They're very much easier to integrate, but Bulgaria nevertheless stands with open borders and open extension to invitations to all refugees. So we don't differentiate among any kind of discriminatory ways. With Ukraine, our just hearts and souls are going there, because we feel that their situation is so unfair in the current stance that they're facing.
On that note, how easy is it for those who are leaving Ukraine to come into Bulgaria? Because here in the UK, there is a big discussion about visa application for refugees. Obviously, it's far easier for people to get from Ukraine to Bulgaria. And as you said, they would probably want to go there more because of the cultural ties, the shared language. But in terms of opening up the borders, it's easy to say. How easy is it to do?
So we've done a very clear system. So we are installing one today, points on the border. Each Ukrainian bus or car can get their documentation right there on the border. Then if they want a refugee status, they're directed to a hotel. And actually some of the hotels are on the seaside. So we're putting them in really nice facilities. The Bulgarian government is paying for the room and board. And we've actually we want to give them a working permit within 30 days, and so that they feel integrated in the society. They can have healthcare and education services, and we're trying to create a marketplace even for employers who want to hire these Ukrainian refugees. So we want to integrate them as fast as possible, so they're not just feeling as outcasts in the society or foreigners. We want to feel them as though they've come to their home. And
just one final question, because the logistics of such a huge number of people moving from one country into neighbouring countries is unfathomable for a lot of people watching. You know, over 1.5 million people have left Ukraine so far, and that will go up as the situation gets worse. Are you putting a cap on numbers for the number of people that you can take into Bulgaria? And I don't say that in terms of, you know, should there be a cap, but Bulgaria as a country, how many can you support? Because you may not know how long this conflict is going to go on for, and if people can ever return to their homes in some cases.
True. I mean, right now we're at 34,000, which is not as big as the 1.5 million, but for a small country like ours, it's a logistics issue that we have to be faced already with. But we're managing so far, and we extend our invitation to help the Ukrainian people even more. So in that respect, Bulgaria is open. We have not seen a limit at this point in time.
Kirill Petkov, Bulgarian Prime Minister, really good to talk to you this afternoon at Sky News. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Prime Minister of Bulgaria speaking to us here on Sky News.